Thank you, Pedro. Thank you for the invitation. I do this for my research. So for those of you who I haven't met in the room, my name's Jason. I'm in the School of Education and in Italy. So this is my bread and butter, the thinking about learning in higher education. And I apologise to the people in the room who have seen bits of this before. I will try not to make the same bad jokes, but no guarantees. Okay, so I want to strip this back a little bit and talk about what active learning is and isn't before we get into what you might do about it. Is that active learning? Janet, you've seen this 4 times. Is that active learning? Maybe? Why do I not? What's going on there? Tim Cook's very happy, clearly.
Well, if you're selling something on Gumtree and doing well at it, then you might say that you've done a good job at it and I've learned something. So I found my and I've solved it.
Right.
What are they doing? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the question.
Yeah.
Right? That is the question. It's very hard to get a sense of what's actually going on there, and I think that partly muddies the waters about what we think about active learning and how it actually operates in face-to-face settings. Is that active learning? Anybody know who this is, where this is, what's going on here? So I think that's somebody else who I've talked about this before. Okay? Yeah, right. Blake, you should know this one. Right. Michael Sandel, it's Harvard. They've got all the cash in the world, obviously, the chandeliers. Now, I would argue that although largely that looks like what's happening here as a basic structural kind of thing, if you watch videos of this, plenty of them on YouTube, it's a very different experience. And I think what drives that experience is the fact that he's able to go in there and interact with all these people at once. Yes, they've got extra resources, there's people around the rooms with microphones and video cameras and all sorts of crazy stuff going on there. Who can do that? I can't do that. I'm going to put it out there. That many students, I can't do it. So I think the most I can get away with is probably about 70 or 80. Right, once I get beyond about 70 or 80 in the room, I start to lose people. People up the back, people around the sides. And I think each individual person as a teacher kind of needs to know their limits around what works for them and what doesn't. Right? So for me, it's about 70 or 80. Obviously, he can do several hundred. I can't do that. Right? And I think that's often one of the conversations we don't have as part of all of this. What does it mean for us as teachers when we start to blend? How are we using space? What's our influence on what's happening? Because obviously it changes. Right? In this kind of situation, if we're just going to talk at students like I'm doing to you right now, they're largely zoning out. Right? They've got other distractions, they're on Facebook. If you've ever sat up the back of a class like this, I've done it, it's fascinating. Facebook, chess games, all sorts of crazy stuff going on there. Some of them actually look at the content. Okay, so we know active learning is effective. Don't need to crap on about this. There's plenty of stuff out there that shows that it works if it's done properly. Now, I think part of what we get a bit stuck on is what this notion of active means. Does it mean students are doing stuff? Right? They're running around a great court. Is that active learning? Right? So this notion that it's just about things that we can see, I think is a bit misguided. Right? So active could just simply mean active here, and it's not necessarily going to be as obvious. And I think that provides us a little bit more breathing space, if you like. Gloria Gallalba, that no doubt many of you know, this is a very recent article, only came out a few weeks ago, I think, really sums this up nicely. That active means more than just seeing students do stuff. Right? There's more than one way to skin a cat here. At the same time, I think it's important always that there are 2 major things that we're trying to get at. And I think if we move away from the fact that students do need to acquire information as part of what they're doing, right? So we want them, when they've got a face-to-face setting, to actually participate in thinking and using the content. Right? That's our primary drive. That's why we're thinking about the way that we might do workshops or tutorials or otherwise. But they also still need to acquire stuff. There's no point in having critical thinking if you don't have anything to think critically about. Right? We also know that pure discovery-based learning doesn't work. Right? So all of you, imagine this, all of your students, this will happen next week, many times probably. First year students come in, here's the problem, off you go. What's going to happen? Mass confusion. Right? So there needs to be a balance. And that's kind of important underneath the tips and tricks that I'm about to get to. So I'm going to talk about this notion of micro skills, because I think what often happens here is that it changes the dynamic of what actually happens in the spaces, and we need to think about how we go about managing that. And this is the thing that I keep hearing about that people are having the most trouble with. Right? It's no longer just about us broadcasting to students in the same room, so how do we manage that? Right? Now, in K-12, they talk about this all the time. It's behaviour management. Right? Now, while that might seem appropriate for some of our students, I think the majority of them are probably not going to like that. So it's kind of a similar idea. When we're talking about this idea of teaching micro skills, it's along those sorts of lines. So anyone with kids might be a bit more familiar with this sort of stuff. Okay, just a tiny little bit of theory, just a little bit, not much. Okay, community of inquiry framework. We love Venn diagrams in education, they're great. This is not an exact map of reality, but I think it'll give you a sense of where I'm going to with this. Now, the idea here is that we need to balance these three major elements. Right? One is about the cognitive presence, which is really about the relationship between students and content. We've heard a lot about this. We do it with things like videos, podcasts. We're changing that relationship, largely being forced to change that relationship because information is freely available, right? So we're being forced to think about that differently. A lot of the response to that is to do these sorts of things differently, right? We've already heard a number of examples of workshops where we're getting the students to do stuff together, right? So that's really that idea of social presence. The bit that we often don't think as much about is, well, okay, what does that mean for the presence that we bring to that? If we're no longer the font of all knowledge that stands up in front of students for 2 hours and just tells them how it is, we need to think differently about what that looks like. And then you also need to think about, okay, if we're changing this, what's the influence on the other two, and vice versa all the way around. Right? Make sense? It's getting late in the afternoon, so. Okay. The other side of this, which I think is important, Peter Goodyear really nails this stuff. He's from the University of Sydney. If you ever get a chance to look at any of his stuff and you understand Latin, he just really writes half the stuff in Latin, which is kind of interesting. I think he nails a lot of this stuff. And for me, it kind of comes down to this. I don't have time to go through all of this today, but the main thing I think is that we often get caught in this setting here where we're worried about what resources we've got and when our classes are timetabled, and understandably we're kind of stuck in that space. But what he suggests is that we need to step outside of that from time to time and think about, well, why is it that we're doing what we're doing? And I think Blake gave a really good example of that, going back to what we understand about basic principles of learning. That should then filter down into what we're doing, right? Best example of a high-level pedagogy is something like problem-based learning. It flows down from what the med-ed people understand about the persuasive trained doctors, medical practitioners. That then flows down to the sorts of things that we do. We're going to run a workshop, a tutorial, a lecture. Importantly, and the bit I think that we don't often talk about, is how we actually do that stuff. Right, now that we're changing and going from a lecture to a big workshop or a set of workshops or different kinds of tutorials, how do we make that happen? And those are our pedagogical tactics. Right? Peter said it in a much better way than I could ever do, but that bit gets ignored. Right? And that's where certainly I found that I had a lot of trouble when I adapted my teaching. I had to. I taught academics for a long time, so I got destroyed constantly. You can imagine what my student evaluations were like. Okay. I want to go through a number of core teaching skills that I think are kind of critical as part of this. Right? And this is the bit where I want your input. Right? There's more experience of teaching in the room than there is here on that side. Here's a number of things that I think are worth talking about. So I'm going to talk about these one at a time, but I want to get your sense about what you feel about each of these. So let's start with space use. What do you do in a space like this? Right, so we want to get some sort of active learning. What is this set up for? And what kind of expectations does that bring? Yeah. So what happens in this? Yeah, basically. Yeah. So how do we mess that up? The dynamic in the room is different, isn't it? Right. So I think there are really subtle things about the way that spaces are set up and the way that we can mess around with them that can make a huge difference. Because really, there's a big psychological barrier that runs across here.
It's even coloured.
That's right. It is, absolutely. So
You stay on that side.
That's right, there are so many cues that say, I'm going to stand here and I'm going to tell you what's going on. right? But it can be very easy.
Unless you're going to know, really bad.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, because it's on stage.
Right.
You fall on safety net.
Right. You jump over it. You do like a crowd surfing thing.
You could. They used to have crash barriers at the front of it.
Yeah. Oh, really?
It's high, so you're teaching behind a metal fence that high.
Nice.
It's a great place.
So you put flowers all over it.
Yeah, totally.
So it doesn't have to just be a physical thing. But you've all just given examples of how that can be crossed by putting your voice across that. Now, you can do that even with big groups by getting them to just talk in that space. Right? Already it's changing. So logically, people are going, oh, okay, it's okay for me to talk here. It's not just about me sitting and listening. So there are multiple ways in which you can play around with that, the way that the space works. Right? So one of the important things here, and again, we don't often think about what our teacher presence does when we're delivering these sorts of sessions, is that our body in the physical space, our voice, the student's voice, all of these things can totally change the dynamic. One of my favourites is what we do when there's a student who talks too much or who's dominating the conversation. People said you did this before, right? I'm just going to think of you, sorry.
That's right. I've done
So,
this last too, so
you have, right? Yeah, so what you can do, not this, because this is kind of intimidating and not really very much, right? Stand beside the student, not get too close again so that it's creepy, but what you're doing is you're signalling, I'm with you, gotcha, I'm on your side here, let's listen to what everybody else has to say. Now, unless they're a psychopath, some of them might be, that cue will be enough for them to change the way that they're thinking about the dynamic in the room as well. Right, so I'll work with the vast majority of students, and you're not going, no, shut up, that's somebody else's turn. There's lots of other tactics that you can use to try and spread the conversation around a bit more. I'm in education, so we can do lots of cool stuff when we work with 6-year-olds and get away with it as modelling. So like giving everybody different coloured ping pong balls and saying, if you've got a green ball, you can answer now. And then they throw them all up, and little things like that can totally change the dynamic of what you're doing and makes it easier. Are you doing the ping pong ball thing?
No, I'd like to.
It's fun.
Talking chicks weeks and little things.
Yeah. But so part of this, of course, is that you've got to do what's authentic to you. Right? And authenticity, I think, is something that's come up a couple of times. So, KK, I hear what you're saying. I think I would have liked you to have taught me macroeconomics, because I didn't, whoever did that didn't do a very good job. But I think your point about what feels comfortable to you as a teacher is a really important one. Right? So if we try to teach in a way that's not authentic to us as teachers, the students are going to pick up on that. Right? So for me, I like to have a bit of a laugh and play around with things, but if that's not your style, then you need to think about what is going to work for you. Right? Which might sound like a truism, but often, again, I don't think we think about this as much as we possibly could.
Can I ask a silly question?
No,
Sometimes we get student groups, and there's always sometimes different codes. And obviously, certainly in our situation, we often get people teaching, and you might have somebody before you who's a person who likes to go to
Yep.
another person who's been dead quiet and doesn't want students to say anything. How do you get, there's a training issue around students, and some years I seem to think, I find that you go, oh, hi, how are you going? And the kids get like stared at, and other times they'll engage in a conversation. That's a really hard ask to get through that sort of training that might have received elsewhere.
That's a good point, and I think that this becomes exacerbated the further they get down the track. So a few years ago, the last time I had undergrads, I had a big group of third years, and I wanted to change everything because the way that unit, they were called units there, totally didn't sit with what I understood about what good learning was, so I wanted to change everything. So there was that awkwardness because those students had been through 2.5 years of setting up certain expectations about what they were in for. For me, I think taking time at the beginning, and I'd be interested to hear from the people in the room who have spoken today, taking the time at the beginning to just go into excruciating detail about why we're doing it the way that we're doing it, even if it's a team taught setup, I think really helps to at least disarm some of the concerns that the students might have so that they know what to expect. So if the whole thing is about team teaching, you're going to get different people teaching you. They're going to do it in a different way. Here's why we think that might be helpful for your learning overall. So you're kind of disarming it that way and just being super explicit. So that if somebody else does come in and teach class, the students go, oh right, this is the thing we're heard about before, and then they are better prepared to be able to respond to that. Does that make sense? And I think often, certainly what I've seen, and I was guilty of this when I first started out, I think I did a lot of things that felt intuitively right to me because that's the way that I thought. And I didn't really think it through enough to be able to explain it to the students well enough. So it's like, oh, well, we're just going to do tutorials. Well, what does that mean? Why are they important? How does that actually help their learning? And I had to actually step back and think more carefully about those things so that when I came in that first session that I was with them, I was able to step them through, this is why we're doing it this way, this is what you can expect as a result, this is why it's important for your outcome as teachers or psychologists or whatever. That's not going to solve all the problems because there's still going to be that variation, but I think at least gets you part way there because you're setting those expectations up with the students. That's how I would do it. Others in the room?
Yeah. What are we doing and why?
Yep.
You know, if you were told you have to come here today, the first thing you'd say is, why?
Yep.
But we were told why, so we chose to come. But
Yep.
we don't tell students why they're doing anything, you're just doing it.
Yep. And like I did with you, I have a habit of going into the detail of saying, here's the papers, here's the evidence that says that this is a good thing for you to do. So, you know, I think those things help. It's not going to get you over the line, but I think for me, I've certainly found a huge difference when I went into that, by going into that kind of detail. Partly I can also get away with it because I'm teaching. I get that. So for me, when I go into some of that stuff, it's also content. You know. But even when it wasn't, when I was teaching org psych was what I was teaching, had nothing to do with teaching and learning, I still spent that time. And over the long haul of the semester, it was worth it. Okay, explaining things. How do we do that? How do we do that so that it's more like active learning?
Set up the activities so they have to work out the answers.
This one's not easy, is it? Because this one is one like, oh, I'm going to explain stuff, I'm just going to... How do we know that it's getting across to the students? How can we do it in a really big group? This is where I usually ask you. What tools have we got?
So they pair up, and then they group together, and they group together, and then you've got
Yep. We can use technologies to help, right? So we can get them to write it up on Padlet or whatever it might be. So I think even if you're going through this process and part of it is necessary that you need to explain things, as I said, we don't just give students problems and expect them to figure out what it is that they're supposed to be figuring out. There are ways that you can then do that checking in with really big groups. And I think that that's often really important. And then that starts to tap into these things that we know about how they're doing active learning in their minds and not just, you know, talking to each other. Which is a nice lead into technology. How can we use technology to increase active learning in a physical space like this? Beyond just grabbing PowerPoints. Full of text. We love it PowerPoint. Full of text, don't we? Yeah.
Well, I've used a lot of classroom response systems, clickers and Padlets, and what that does is it immediately engages students in tasks. And particularly with the classroom response systems, they vote usually in a poll. So before, when you ask their opinion, the whole room is quiet. You do a poll, somebody's voted for something. Now they see across the classroom all these different responses, and they feel like they have to defend their vote. So you can start to generate discussion.
Yeah. Great. The other thing is that subtly that also breaks the barrier, right? Because what's happening on this side of the room is suddenly being influenced by the people on that side of the room, even if you're using technology to do that. Right? So that can work in really large groups where there's a lot of discomfort, you know, particularly first years don't want to speak up often when there are 800 other students in the room. So those kinds of technologies, I think, are great for breaking that barrier that way. But they're having some input in what's happening down here. Anything else? Blake? Oh.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, I've tried some of those technology things where I used to teach the first year course in a regular lecture format, and I found what actually got most people involved, so only about 40% of people using their phones or whatever, just get it to your head up.
Yep.
And you use a command as like customer commit to an answer, then you can follow up with different people around the classroom. And they've got to, you know, they're going to have to talk to people to make that end up.
Yeah.
And you can like set it up so you can explain to them what a classic experiment is, to get them to predict what the outcome will be. They all get it wrong. And so they can all see that everybody agrees, so they're all really confident that they're right. And then you show them what the results are. You know, they're like, man, we all got it wrong. You know, when you go around the room, and, you know, so you get them committed publicly to an answer for low effort, and then you can get them to action.
I like that. I think so that's the virtually no tech version, and I think that there's also an in-between version that some of you might have seen. So students each get a QR code thing that has 4 different orientations. So they can hold it up if they want to answer A, and then you just use your phone to pick up the QR codes around the room, and it will do a sum. Or if they want B, they put it in a different orientation. And it's kind of fun for the students because they get to play around with this. And I've generally found that people use those sorts of things. Chris, do you know what that's called? I can never remember the name of the app. Clickers. Yeah. So it requires printing a few things out, but I've generally found that you get a much better response rate because students find it hilarious that they're holding this QR code at different angles. So there's lots of different options, I think, for how technology can help to, again, manage spaces even if you've got large numbers of students. And people like Chris, I think, are pretty good in helping to advise people like me who don't know much about this stuff, and Anisha, who knew the name of the thing that I didn't, for helping to figure that out. How do we respond to students, and how do we get them to respond to us? Use technology. What am I doing?
I'm talking.
Now, I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm quite happy for it to go as long as it takes, because I'm not going to feel very awkward about that. It becomes really awkward for a lot of people in the room. Blake?
Those mics that are in like a padded queue, you throw them in the room.
Yeah.
So you just throw them in the room. Somebody has to catch it.
Yeah.
If you catch it, you got to talk.
Yeah, they're fun. Yeah, they're great. What else? Other way. So if a student offers us a response, what are we going to not do?
Oh, it's worthless. Yeah.
No, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Is anybody going to respond after that?
I've seen a lot of people, they just go yes, and then just like you're unpacking that a little bit further.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So that's just as bad because you've said something and then you really didn't get a response.
Yeah.
And it was right.
Almost as bad as saying you're wrong, you're right.
You're right. Yeah, we're done here. Let's go on. Yeah.
It helps when you know their names.
It does. Yeah, which is obviously going to be difficult if you've got 1,200 students. Yeah, absolutely. And I've struggled with that. But apparently, we can get access to class lists with student photos, which I've only just realised. Somebody only just told me that. You've got to ask for it, I think. You heard it here first, folks. So I don't know, you have to ask. But apparently, you can get access to that because that would make that much easier. Okay. Well, that's right. Yeah, but you usually get the usual suspects who always want to speak up, and you can give the impression that you know everybody's name without actually knowing everybody's name.
Well, you do pick a person. So, Kate, that was a really good thing you said. Kate, pick someone else that you know. What else could they add to that? And then I won't know. That's the way to do it.
And the other 1,200 students in the room pick.
Eventually we'll get
She
you.
knows us all. How do we vary things? Any ideas about that? I think a big one is the way that we present stuff. And I think that there's a lot of calls that you need to make about how you're going to use visual stimuli in space. If you are now feeling bad because you have PowerPoint slides full of text, don't worry. I go to conferences that are educational technology people who will literally talk about cognitive load with an entire full of text. So don't worry, those are supposedly experts and they do it too. So I think that is one big part of how you might do this. So some of the things that I do is that if I've got something like this, I'll play around and put a family view board up, and a lot of younger students don't actually know what family view is, but they can ask their grandparents. So just the way that we present the visual aids can mess things up. The way that you then organise the room. So one week you might do something where you're getting people to work in groups together. You might get them to move around the room, even in rooms like this. That's like the chaos is part of the fun, right? I think, getting people to move from one side of the room to the other, again, changes the dynamic and the expectation about how the space works. So there's lots of ways we can vary different elements of what we're doing in these environments that can mess up what is not necessarily the most effective way of doing all of this. How can we reinforce it? We've already had good examples of this. Quizzing? What else?
Yeah, I think misconceptions.
Yep, that's a great one.
Peer-to-peer.
Yep.
And finding out and listening to what they're saying.
Yep. Don't underestimate the power of the Harvard 1 minute paper. We know what that is. Right? What's the main thing you take out of this lesson? Even if you get a handful of responses, if you want, you can hand around the sheet where people can write it down if they're really concerned. What's the main thing that you're still not sure about? Right? Again, you can use Padlet or you can use something else to collect those responses. So I think that also then gets them thinking about what's been covered during that lesson. Right? So there's little things like that that we can play around with. Sorry, Petra, I realise I'm running out of time. Questioning is important. Obviously, we want to give students something that they can respond to and think about, and we don't want to say no when they actually respond to it. Illustrating things is important. We've heard a bit about that already, but again, something to be mindful of. And I think one of the main things that we often forget is that one of the main value adds of students coming to campus is seeing knowledge put into action with us. So again, I've got it easy because I'm teaching, but I think to an extent all of us are in the same boat because what we're doing is we're taking basic knowledge and showing how that can be enacted in some way. And often I think that gets forgotten. And students will come to campus if they see that value in what we're doing. That's very hard to pick up from a YouTube video. Being in the same room is different. Okay, last thing, I'm going to rush through this. So one of the other things that we know is that one-off PD sessions don't really work very well. So I'm going to point you to some stuff that you can look at if you want to follow up on any of this. I think one of the main things that we get stuck on here is that most of us, myself included, start down this path because we have a lot of these, right? There's also a lot of this. We really only need to know where the bits overlap, right? And part of what's great about these discussions is that we can think about what's in here, and then we can go back and think about how that relates to our bit of that. What does it mean to teach economics or psychology or architecture or whatever? The bit where I get stuck is this bit, and I go and get help. I don't know anybody who's expert across all three of those areas. Actually, I know one person, but they were at PVC by the time they were 44. So the important thing is that I think conversations are important across here. We've got plenty of stuff on the Italy side about this. There's a whole lot of resources there, funnily enough, on active learning. And they're great. Think per share, how does that work? How do we do a minute paper? Jigsaw, if you're a bit more game. They can go really pear-shaped, but it can be kind of fun. Higher Education Academy's got a lot of great stuff, particularly about teaching in large groups. Everybody around the world is struggling with the same idea. We're not the only ones in this boat. There's lots of good resources there. University College London's got a learning design site, again, going down into detail about the different kinds of things that you want students to do in sessions, to think about what we might actually get them doing in these active sessions. They think about case studies, can they think about coming up with model answers, can they, there's a whole lot of different choices there. That's worth checking that out. If you just put UCL learning design, it'll take you straight there. That stuff's really great. Then here are the tools that you can use in order to do the things on the previous slide. We want students to collaborate. Here's a whole bunch of technologies that allow them to do that. We've also got a podcast. One of the episodes is on active learning with somebody who's won all sorts of prizes for it from Monash, which was useful. Knows much more about all of this stuff than I do. And the last thing that I'll leave you with is that for your own disciplines, there's probably a whole lot of stuff out there that you can use to help with those face-to-face sessions, right? So I always think back to when I was teaching psychology in undergrad, there's a mountain of this sort of stuff. This one in particular I used to use a lot, right? Because again, when I started teaching, I just did the stuff that was done to me. And when I got this resource, and most field disciplines would have something like this, I had 100 new ideas about stuff that I could do. It was great. And I just stole them from other people. There's no plagiarism in teaching, they asked. All right, I'll leave it at that. Sorry, Petra, I went a bit over.